So yeah, at the beginning, please tell us something about your musical education.
My music education started as a gift from my parents, actually. They bought me piano lessons when I was a kid. And at the beginning, I wouldn't say I was so enthusiastic, but gradually I became to like it more and more. It wasn't until I was 16 or 17 that I started composing seriously. And one of my teachers in school said I should apply to a specialist music school because they'd heard some composing and improvising that I'd done. I had no knowledge of how to write for the orchestra, no real compositional skill other than I could improvise. Anyway, I put together a portfolio of music for the Royal Academy of Music, and they offered me a place. And when I found out why they offered me a place to study composition, they said, well, you don't know anything about orchestra, but we can teach you that. You don't know anything about music production. We can teach you that. You don't know conducting. They listed a whole list of things that I couldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
But then they said, the one thing you can do is you can write a melody, and that is the hardest thing for us to teach. So that's why you got your place. Here we are, like uh, 18 years later, I guess. It took me a while to get started in the industry. I started working seriously probably when I was 25 or 26. And then everything changed in 2015 when Ori and the Blind Forest came out. And I've been working pretty solidly ever since, right up until my most recent release, Ori and the Will of the Wisps.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, how did you get to this project? So Ori?
So Ori and the Blind Forest, the director discovered me online on a small website called ModDB. ModDB is a place where some game developers go to make games in their spare time, just like fun projects or add-ons for existing games.
Mm-hmm.
I had a profile there with some music, and Thomas Mahler, the director, liked one of the tracks on my profile. He contacted me about Ori and the prototype of that game, and he said if I do the music for the prototype, I can score the full game if they have a successful pitch to a publisher. Obviously, Microsoft liked the game, the pitch was successful, and he was true to his word. I got to score the full game and, of course, the sequel.
So we are at the very beginning of this. Wow.
Yes, exactly. So, I was involved right from the beginning. It's funny that I listened back to the music for the prototype, and it's very, very different to what it became. But it was enough to get Microsoft interested in the game, and not just make one game, but we got to make two. So that's really cool.
Mm-hmm. And what can you tell about the Will and the Wisps? So, what is the game about?
So, Will of the Wisps is a direct continuation of Ori and the Blind Forest. The story picks up like literally from the ending of the Blind Forest, and I'm going to try and not spoil for anyone who hasn't played Blind Forest, but there's a character at the end of Blind Forest that you save, and at the beginning of Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Ori looks after this character, and so the opening of the game. You're looking after the new character, and then you get split up at the end of the prologue of Will of the Wisps. And the first part of the game is you have to find the character that you brought up. While you are finding that character in this new world in Will of the Wisps, you also discover that there is a malevolent force that is corrupting the world, and you eventually also decide to find the source of the malevolent force and take care of that too. I don't want to say too much more because spoilers, but the game's only been out 3 months. But yeah, that's kind of like a rough guide to the story. The game is best played, I feel like, if you play Ori and the Blind Forest and Will of the Wisps like back to back, like immediately after, kind of almost as like one continuous thing, like it was a complete story. So if you think is Blind Forest is part one, and then Will of the Wisps is just part two of the same story.
So I hope for a computer release. So I don't have a console.
It's out on PC.
Great.
It's on Game Pass for PC, but it's also on Steam and it's on Xbox. So yeah, Xbox and PC right now.
So yeah, good. I have to finish the Blind Forest and then buy the Will of the Wisps.
Yep. Both Blind Forest and Will of the Wisps are on Xbox, Game Pass, and Steam.
Great. And how was your approach for this?
So with Will of the Wisps, I obviously had to take the DNA of Ori and the Blind Forest, but try to expand on it. So it had to feel new, because I think when you do a sequel, people expect new material, but also they want to hear some of the more popular themes from the first game. One of the things that helped me with this is that in Will of the Wisps, there are a lot more characters in the game, a lot more characters that you meet. So that helped with being able to establish new themes and melodies. Also, there are a lot of new environments that are quite different from the environments that Ori encountered in the first game in Blind Forest. For example, this is the first time we had an area that was the desert, so that was like a new palette to explore. We had an area that is completely shrouded in darkness, where a spider is basically stalking you throughout the environment. So it's kind of fun to explore what would horror sound like, but in the context of Ori's music. Most horror music might be like super atonal and dissonant, and I didn't want to go that route. I tried to come up with something that still felt tonal and relatively easy to listen to, as opposed compared to atonal or dissonant music, but also felt very unnerving and creepy throughout. That's just one example. There were a whole load of different environments that allowed me to explore and expand the music from the first game. But because of the story, there were chances to reuse themes from the first game as well that carried over into the second game.
I've listened to it, the score, and it sounds great and a little bit darker in a few moments than the first one.
That is correct. Yeah, I mean, the story is a little bit heavier than the first one. I think Ori, the first game is, it's like a child's first steps into the world. It's maybe a little naive. It's kind of charming. Whereas in this game, Ori kind of has grown up, and it's the culmination of his journey and what his true destiny is. And in the game, there is some pretty heavy material. I would say about this game is that it's kind of all builds towards the finale, which on the album, it's a long album, as you know. The last like 4 to 5 tracks on the album, everything in this game kind of builds towards the ending. So even though it's darker and heavy throughout, like the weight is really, all of that pays off in the ending of the game. It's if you've played both games, I think almost everyone will find the ending of Will of the Wisps incredibly rewarding in its own way. I'm very confident in our ending. I've said that multiple times. I'm kind of proud of what we were able to achieve as a studio with what we did for the ending.
Great. Yeah, I'm looking forward. And were you there at the beginning again?
Yes, yep. I was there right at the start. So the first time we announced the game was at E3 in 2017. And they gave me the honor of playing on stage at E3 at the Xbox press conference, which was pretty terrifying. So I was playing the piano and accompanying the image, which was being broadcast around the world. So I had been working on the game since 2017. But I would say I didn't work on it really full time until 2019, because obviously game development at the beginning, I kind of knew what was going on, but it's not until later on in development that the whole story and the flow of the game starts to come together. So at the beginning, I was able to like start figuring out what each environment might sound like and maybe establish some character themes. But then in 2019, I started kind of putting all of the pieces together to make sure that they worked in the game.
Yeah, and more general, what is for you the fascination of games music?
I think, especially with the way the industry is going, the storytelling is becoming much more varied in terms of like what we can do. I think the upcoming generation of games, the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, and what we are about to embark on in this next generation of games, I think is probably maybe the beginning of the golden age in games. I don't think we've reached it yet. The games industry, if you compare it to the film industry, is still pretty young. And I don't think we've had that golden era yet. There's so many good games, but I still feel like we have like kind of one more level to go, and then we'll really have found our stride. And in terms of like the music for games, it's just a chance to explore all of these crazy worlds and crazy environments. I mean, you can do anything in games. I mean, one of the cool things about games is you can put the camera anywhere. Now, that's something you can only really do in animation or computer graphics heavy films. When you're shooting live action in film, you can't really put the camera everywhere unless you have a lot of drones. Whereas in a video game, you can kind of put the camera anywhere, which really like increases your opportunity for interesting storytelling. Plus, I find that game development is incredibly fluid and freeform. Like when you shoot a film, once the film is shot, you can't really change the footage that you have unless you reshoot it, which means you usually have a massive budget. But in games, you can kind of change the scenes until quite late. Now, of course, that has its own problems, but it means you can spend longer finding the best solutions for your game. You have more opportunity to experiment and try things out, and that, as a creative person, is incredibly exciting.
Yeah, I love it. Or in huge worlds, you could stop and enjoy the landscapes or something. I love it in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. So I stood
Right.
on a mountain and looked around and wow.
Yep.
And,
Yeah, I mean, you control the player controls like the story. It's the same in Ori and the Blind Forest or Will of the Wisps. Like if you want to stop and just admire the visuals, you can absolutely do that. Yeah, I think the interactive element of games is always going to be attractive for composers, just because it's always fun when I watch people playing Ori on Twitch or YouTube. It's always fun to see how different people react to what we've created. That never gets old. It's always entertaining to see other people's reactions. It's not something you can really get with a film.
Yeah, I started the game and the first reaction was, whoa, great music.
Exactly. Thank you.
And I've been looking forward to play it through to the end.
Excellent.
And what do you think is the best thing about composing?
So the thing that I guess the reason why I like doing this job, it's the chance to, I hope this doesn't sound too dark. It's the chance to manipulate people's emotions. Like I watch a scene and when I'm writing, I try to make myself feel something. If I don't feel something, then I don't expect my audience will feel something. So, if a scene makes me happy or makes me cry, then I'm like, okay, well, there's a chance that it will happen to someone else. And so that's the most exciting thing about composing, is the chance to help people get in touch with their emotions, maybe help them feel something, because I think that makes art more meaningful. I would rather like create something which made people happy or sad, or just made people have an opinion about something, rather than just make something that was just okay. So I think one of the things that the Ori games does, for example, is it does make people feel something. And of course, not everyone feels things in the same way. So some people, might get upset. Just as an example, I'm not going to give a spoiler, but like the way the ending of Will of the Wisps happens, some people will be happy and some people won't. And I think that's interesting. Like that's the kind of thing that interests me about composing and about working in this medium in general. It's just the chance to tell stories, especially of so many different kinds of stories, is really fun and interesting.
And is there something that makes it less fun for you?
Only the inevitable crunch at the end when you're trying to get everything ready for the final release. It's the old saying, the last 10% of the project requires 90% of the work. It's when the schedule gets condensed at the end, if you're not organized, it can be really hard, and you're doing like lots of late nights to get everything ready for the recording. Just in the case of Will of the Wisps, we were recording 3.5 hours of music over 2 recording sessions in December and January. So it's not just the recordings. It's like you have to book flights, you have to book hotels, you have to make sure that the orchestration is ready, you have to make sure that everything is printed, you have to make sure the conductor knows the music. There's so many different aspects to getting a recording ready. And yeah, I guess it's just the organization aspect takes so much time. But the reward is, of course, when you hear the final result. So it can be a roller coaster ride sometimes, but the highs are definitely higher than any of the lows.
At the end, yeah, how much time do you get to compose?
I mean, on this game, on both Ori games, I've had pretty much all the time I could possibly want. On other projects, sometimes I'll take like my work on Minecraft, for example. Some of those projects, like it's basically produce a whole album in like 4 to 5 weeks. So that can be composing, arranging, orchestrating, recording, and then final mix and mastering in about 4 to 5 weeks. It really depends on the game and the schedule and the developer and the publisher. But any professional composer will just look at the schedule and be like, yeah, I can do that. And then they will figure it out.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned, yeah, Minecraft. I listened to the music on your page and Norse mythology, and there was only one question in my mind. Why don't you make Assassin's Creed Valhalla?
Well, the thing is, Jesper Kyd is the original Assassin's Creed composer, and he's from Denmark. So I think it makes sense for Jesper to be doing Assassin's Creed, the Assassin's Creed games. And I'm sure he will do a great job. That said, I would like to do an Assassin's Creed game at some point in the future. It's probably the game franchise I would love to work on the most. I think the one that might be appropriate for me, if they ever decide to go to China or Japan or anywhere in the East, I think that would be a good fit for me, partially because I lived in Japan for 3 years and know that part of the world pretty well. So I feel like I could do a good job. Also, I did Minecraft Chinese mythology, so I'm pretty familiar with Asian music. But I feel like they're going to continue making a lot of Assassin's Creed games. So hopefully one day that opportunity will come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fingers crossed. And yeah, the fans wish, yeah, samurai or something. That would be cool, yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, but my next wish were the Romans. So after Egypt and Greek, then Roman. That would be perfect. But yeah, I'm looking forward. And Jen, and how did you come to Arc?
How did I come to Arc? So actually, Arc was another connection on ModDB, the website I mentioned for Ori. So the game developers for Arc, they found me because I worked on a mod which became a full game called Primal Carnage. This came out in 2012. Like, it's a really old game. Anyway, the animators for Primal Carnage were making all of the dinosaur animations in Arc. And then the studio that makes Arc asked the animation people, were like, do you know any composers? And they were like, yeah, we do actually. And so this was maybe about a month before Ori came out. I'd finished my work on Ori and the Blind Forest. And so a month before Ori came out, I did a pitch for Ark Survival Evolved. And my pitch was the main theme for the game. It's like literally what is still the main theme for the game. And yeah, so I sent that in. And then they did their first trailer in June 2015. And I've been working on Ark ever since. I think now I've done about 4 hours, maybe 4.5 hours of music for the game, because they have the base game, and then they have 1, 2, 3, 4 expansion packs, and there's a 5th expansion pack coming out sometime in the next 12 months. So yeah, the project, when I first saw the project, I will admit, I was like, man, this just looks like a crazy dinosaur game with humans. It looks absolutely nuts. But it became really, really popular. Like, I never could have imagined how popular it would become in early access. And even now, 5 years later, it is still really popular. It's still in the top 10 most played games in Steam. Like, if you check Steam charts, like every day, it's in the top 10. It's absolutely nuts. And they keep bringing out new content, which of course needs new music. It's an absolutely crazy game that people seem to love spending time in. So yeah, they keep asking me to do new music for it, and yeah, they've given me some great opportunities. The original Arc album was recorded at Abbey Road Studios with a massive orchestra of 93 players. Yeah, that was a really cool opportunity, and yeah, I will happily work for them as long as they are happy with my work.
Yeah, I tried the game, but I don't know if I. So,
It's yeah,
it's very
it's
hard.
not for it's hard, and it's pretty brutal,
Hmm.
and you need to put a lot of hours in. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the people playing have played for thousands and thousands of hours. So yeah, I guess they found a certain. It's the same kind of people, I think, that play these games like Eve Online or World of Warcraft or whatever. They're willing. People find like a game they are willing to invest time in and level up their character and like learn the mechanics of the game. And yeah, there's clearly a massive audience for this kind of game. I never could have imagined how big it would have become. But yeah, it's been a really cool project to work on.
Mhm. Yeah, so it gets a second chance because I get it
Yep.
for free the last month. So
Yep.
let's
Oh,
try
on
it again.
yeah, it was on Epic Game Store
Hmm.
for free, I
Oh
think.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Hmm. They have a lot of free games, and so I
Yep.
collect them and yeah, try it.
Try it out. Yep.
Great. And so your absolute stream project would be scoring an Assassin's Creed or
I
something
think so.
else.
Yes, I am working right now on a dream project. I
Mm.
cannot say what it is, but people will find out in this month
Mm.
actually what it will be. I can't say anything more. In sometime in July it will be announced. So yeah, it's a very very well known game that is coming out this year. I just can't say anything more than that.
You make me curious. And so yeah, are you a gamer too?
Yes, yeah, when I have time. Yeah, I love playing games. Mostly I'm playing the single player adventure games, obviously Assassin's Creed.
Mm.
But I also like games that are heavy in story. Like single player story games are like kind of like what I love to spend time in. Like anything which is a single player story, doesn't matter if it's first person, third person, horror, adventure. I mean, even like the fun cartoony action games, like one of the games that was revealed by PlayStation a few weeks ago was the new Ratchet and Clank game. It looks amazing. That's like those kinds of games just look like great fun. So I don't play too many multiplayer games because most of them don't really have stories. Like I've never played Fortnite, for example,
Mm.
because it just seems like it never ends. I don't play Valorant. I don't play League of Legends. I don't play World of Warcraft. That's like a whole different world. I think the only multiplayer games I play are game multiplayer games that are short. So I like fighting games, for example, like Street Fighter or Tekken. I also play a few sports games. Probably my favorite multiplayer game though is Rocket League because the matches are really short and it's really fun. And the great thing about Rocket League is that it's very easy for a beginner to
Hmm.
play, but to become really good at the game, you have to spend time in the game. So it's like easy to play and have fun, but hard to master. I think that kind of game is really good for like casual multiplayer gamers like me.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm. Yes, and I tried irgendwie at yeah, friend of mine at Xbox, and yeah, it's a little bit fun. So yeah,
yep,
it's on my list on Steam. So yeah, one day when I
excellent.
finish, well, what's my list now? Assassin's Creed Syndicate. I have to finish GTA 4,
Yep,
5. So yeah, a lot of games.
yep.
But I hope my computer let me play. So it has a few problems the last
Yep.
days. And so yeah, and you also worked with Aeralie Brighton. So
Yes.
how was the work with her?
Yeah, so I've worked with her since Ori and the Blind Forest. She's kind of the she's almost like a character by herself because of how unique her voice is in the game. Generally, we use her voice when it matters the most. I feel like she's her voice is so powerful that if you used it too much, it would have less impact. So it's the same in Blind Forest and Will of the Wisp. We only use her for like the maximum impact. And yeah, she's a real talent. Her vocal sound, I don't think anyone really has like the vocal sound that she does. She has insane range, and yeah, she's been a pleasure to work with on both Ori projects.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I love her voice, and so it's great. So yeah, code and next projects are secret. Then I would say
Yes, I wish I could say more, but yeah, I have a lot of projects coming up, like actually for the next couple of years, but I literally cannot say anything about them, which that just means that they're pretty big and exciting projects. So yeah, but you'll hear about one of them in the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. And so yeah, short before the end, little thing I call 5 terms, and you tell me what comes to your mind.
Okay.
Music.
Relaxation.
Orchestra.
Power.
Hollywood.
Oh my god, give me like 5 seconds. There's like too many things flashing. This might sound silly. Let me come back to that one. Give me the next one. I will come back to that one.
Okay. Games.
Fun. I mean, I know that's obvious, but
Okay. And spare time.
cigars. I bet you weren't expecting that.
No.
And Hollywood. Hollywood. I'm just gonna say divas. Like, because there's so many. That is literally the first thing I think of when I go to Hollywood, because there's just so many divas in Hollywood. Not just singers, just like literally everyone. Yeah, divas. That's my answer. I was trying to find the right word. That was like the one I could think of.
So if you could choose, if you would prefer to compose for games or movies?
It's not really a preference between games or films. I think I don't really care as long as the thing has a good story. For me, if there's a good story, that's an opportunity to write good music. Obviously, we try to do our best on every project, but I think a games or films music is elevated by the story that's being told. I think we've all experienced several films or games that have amazing music, but because the story wasn't as good as we'd hoped, the music doesn't have the impact that it should have. Whereas a game or a film that maybe the music, if you listen to it by itself, it might not be as interesting to listen to, but because the story is so good, I think the story can actually elevate the music in a way, in a very unique way. Of course, the best is when you have great music combined with great story. But I think, for me, as long as the story is interesting, I don't care if it's a game or a film or a TV show.
Great.